Hello and welcome to a Week 7 edition of the Establish the Run Waiver Wire Show. My name is Adam Levitan, as always joined by the season-long bro you know and love, John Daigle. Daigle, how's it going today?
A gloomy, cold, rainy fall day in Chicago opened up the window to get a little more sunlight in here. So the people across the street in Wicker Park are going to instead get to see me yell about all of the injured replacements we're going to talk about today. Because in 10 years in doing this, going all the way back to NBC, I swear to you, I don't ever think we've had this many if-then options that are going to decide everyone's week on waiver wires.
Yes, the injury news, it is indeed flowing. And also, Daigle, the trade news is indeed flowing. Getting set to record here with Silva in a little bit on Team by Team. We'll talk plenty more about the Davante Adams thing. But from a waiver wire perspective, we have the list here for the anyone watching on YouTube. We have the top 10 list here. Do you think that Jakobi Meyers would be on top of this list now if he were to be available in your league? We know Jakobi Meyers is hurt right now. However, with Davante Adams gone, he is going to function as the number one wide receiver for the Raiders for the rest of this season.
The funniest thing about the waiver wire is there is always combating comments from people that want it catered to their league. And so just know, for the sleeper league people, you win this time because Jakobi Meyers is rostered in 67% of your leagues. You can't get him. But that means you're smarter than the Yahoo League people because he's only rostered 50% of leagues there. If he is out there, remember, the last time we saw him a couple weeks ago without Davante Adams for that hamstring injury, if that's what it was, he recorded over a 40% target share, led the team as well. Trey Tucker is available in a majority of leagues, but I still question if this passing offense can support Brock Bowers, Jakobi Meyers, and then literally anyone else.
Yeah, agreed. So I think I'd probably have Jakobi Meyers near the top here, but running backs I think are typically more valuable. We'll get to that, some of them here in a second. The only other fallout from the trade from a waiver perspective I wanted to mention, Mike Williams should be an easy drop, right? And I'm sure some people are also going to be out there advocating to drop Allen Lazard too. What do you think about those two guys?
The drop list has not been updated for the trade just yet, but I will put Allen Lazard on there. And honestly, we talked about this on the DFS show. I know those are two different games, but it's been hard to fathom Allen Lazard in lineups anyhow, given that he's really just been touchdown or bust to this point, with those 2 touchdowns in week 1 coming on a free play from Tyrod Taylor. So he finally popped last night for over 100 yards and a touchdown. We finally respect the receiving line for a change. And then, of course, we just think he gets drowned out now because although Aaron Rodgers, the schedule is opening up a lot more to this point of the season, the Jets have played the hardest passing attack in the entire league. I still don't think it's a situation where he can elevate 3 wide receivers. So Lazard to me will be a drop, especially in 10-team formats.
Yeah, oh, for sure in 10-team, yeah. And, a lot of Lazard's production last night was on that Hail Mary as well. Or at least some of it was on the Hail Mary as well. Yeah, I mean, we're going to have Mike Williams and, we're going to have Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson combining for around 50% of the Jets' targets. It's going to be really hard to get there on the rest of those guys from that. All right. The other big news from week 6 was the Isaac Guerendo breakout. Now, there is Christian McCaffrey news out there. He's back in practice, seems to be doing okay, not going to play anytime soon. Seems like week 10, I believe, is like the likeliest time Christian McCaffrey comes back. In the meantime, Jordan Mason has an AC sprain. Sounds minor. I mean, guys play through these AC sprains all the time. However, he could miss a game. And so Isaac Guerendo is pretty much unowned. I agree with Daigle's recommendation here, only 5 to 10% of your fab, though, because I don't know how much we're going to get out of Guerendo. Again, I think this Mason thing, if he's out at all, sounds like a 1-week injury at most. But Daigle, what do you think about 49ers running back in Guerendo right now?
And with Christian McCaffrey, as you said, also hovering around, we're looking at most 2 weeks that Guerendo would get the start, but still a player we need to prioritize. It is a tough matchup, I will say. The Chiefs defense don't give it up to anyone. They've shut down the big dog himself, 46 yards and a touchdown for Derrick Henry. Bijan went for 30 yards and a touchdown. Alvin Kamara the other week, 11 carries for just 26 yards. So it's not a free square, even if both Mason and Christian McCaffrey are out this game. But I'm trusting Shanahan and just the entire construct of the engine of the 49ers offense, and saying, just like they did in the season opener against the Jets when Mason ran for over 140 yards and a touchdown, I bet 221-pound Garendo, who is a top 5 most athletic running back to come out of the combine in the last 2 decades, I'm betting someone like that can still get there against the Chiefs if he gets to start.
Yeah. The other one, the running back here, I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on, is Ty Chandler. Hopefully you guys have been following the one injury away list and you already have Ty Chandler. Aaron Jones is currently questionable with his hip thing as they come out of the bye, but he's already back in practice. This does not seem like a long-term injury at all. If Aaron Jones even misses 1 week, I still, in 12-team formats, I still think it's worth stashing Ty Chandler in the event that Aaron Jones goes down. Ty Chandler is going to be a feature back for them. More interestingly, Daigle, we have more movement in the Packers wide receiver. And honestly, I feel bad for the people that blew it on Dontavian Wicks because I do think that it was the right move. You know, I do think that spending a lot of your fab on Dontavian Wicks was right. The run out was just so bad. He performed poorly in his first chance, in his second chance against the Cardinals. He gets hurt. And now Christian Watson, who maybe is available in some leagues. I don't know what you guys are doing, but apparently he's under 50% in all the leagues here. Christian Watson comes back from his ankle injury, no problem, and looks really good, as does Romeo Doubs come back from the personal thing and looks really good. So where are you at on Packers wide receiver stuff now, Daigle?
And people who blew over half their fab on Wicks, including me in my leagues, also probably don't want to hear that he led the team in targets in the first quarter before getting injured. It's not going to help him come back from his shoulder injury anytime soon. But what we saw happen was exactly why we picked up Wicks in the first place, is that when one of them is off the field, someone else steps up and we know who it is. In this case, it was Christian Watson. Didn't spike the 2 touchdowns like Romeo Doubs. We'll get to him in a second. Watson still, over those last 3 quarters, was targeted on 22% of his routes and tied Doubs in red zone targets. And this was a player who we didn't expect to be full-time coming off of his own injury, and yet he jumped right back into the lineup the moment Wicks was removed. Not only that, but again, we are trying to pick out who is going to lead this team in targets weekly. And Doubs, although he did spike those 2 touchdowns, his 12.5% target share was actually his lowest in 3 games he's played with Jordan Love this year. It's a pretty sparse receiving line as he still continues to be a touchdown or bust option. So I still like betting on Watson, although given all of the options and the fact that Wicks is only a week-to-week injury, I don't think you need to go all in this time around.
Yeah, agreed. The other wide receivers on the list worth mentioning, Pop Douglas. I mean, Patriots just can't find anyone that's better than Pop Douglas. He's like 5'8", 175, and he's their best receiver week in and week out. We did get a bump here because they, of course, finally, correctly, went to Drake May. I thought May impressed. I wouldn't be excited about starting Demario Douglas in any given scenario, but I guess in some deep leagues and full PPR, maybe you can. Daigle, how aggressive on Demario Douglas? And I'm sure there's some people out there have a decision like Demario Douglas or Juju Smith-Schuster. What do you think there?
Oh, so you haven't looked at the schedule since I have to turn around the league by Monday for the waiver wire. You haven't noticed that Drake May gets the Jaguars. So you do want to start Drake May every single week, especially this one. But for Mario Douglas, this is something that was initially pointed out to me by our good friend, Josh Norris, when he stopped watching the Panthers games. He told me that Drake May loves the receivers from the slot going back to North Carolina. And so I went back and looked at the context, and he was correct. I even put it in the waiver column. Josh Downs, 104 targets in 2022 at North Carolina. And then in 2023, Nate McCollum and Brian Nesbitt totaled over 120 targets from the slot together. That's, of course, where Douglas led the team and routes run this past game. It's not only that, to have a team high 24% target share from the slot from May, but also the fact that although I don't mind sprinkling on someone like Kendrick Bourne in 14-team leagues, who else is coming for these targets from Douglas? So right now, I think you should be very high on him, and I still have him over Juju Smith-Schuster. For whatever reason, there's going to be flop lag on waiver wires with Juju after that Monday night game. And I think it's good to step back 2 weeks later and still have a level head and look at it and say, okay, if just in case you missed last week's pod, the Chiefs aren't going to run 80 plays per week. and they're not going to get this Saints defense that's allowing the 8th most fantasy points to opposing slot receivers every single game. Not only that, but Juju, of course, is coming off of the most receiving yards he's ever had since December 2018. So with all that being said, I still want to be tepid about how I treat him rest of season, and I think Douglas from May is a better option.
Yeah, that one's really close. I think that's interesting. Yeah, that's a tough one for me. Yeah, I think it's really, really close. I'll side with Daigle. I agree on the Pop Douglas thing. Super interesting spot though there for both of them. Last one on this list I wanted to mention. Marvin Harrison Jr. went down with a concussion. Guy's been missing the week after with a concussion for the most part this year. Michael Wilson seems like he's the one they want to be the alpha in this scenario. I just don't know if he's capable. If you need a 1 week spot start, he's home against the Chargers, I believe, this week, but it's not like something I would get overly excited about. Any more thoughts on Michael Wilson?
Also, because the league doesn't want to make anything easy on us, that's a Monday night game. So Harrison will at least have the extra 24 hours to heal before that Monday night doubleheader. We're bringing it back. We go away for a week, then we come back with it. But Michael Wilson, quietly, over the last 3 games and quarter and a half, he's seen just 3 fewer targets than Marvin Harrison. He's actually been eating into Harrison's ceiling, and I'm sure anyone who rosters and starts Harrison every week is very aware of that note. So just as the big-bodied, good profile receiver who also led the team in end zone targets this past week whenever Harrison left the field, I think he's still at least in line for a good spot start here, assuming MHJ is out.
Okay. Let's go to, there's some really interesting options here for more deep league people. Maybe not even deep league people. Like even if you're in a 12-team league, I think you should be, we've talked about Vidal like so much, but guys like Vidal, Ray Davis, Sean Tucker, McNichols, Bub Means, there's some really interesting guys down here at the bottom. I want to start with Vidal. I feel like I've been talking about stashing this guy on the rest of the season 150 show for the last month or so. He finally gets his chance with Gus Edwards going on IR. And I thought that maybe Hassan Haskins would play ahead of him. He didn't. Vidal played ahead of Hassan Haskins. Vidal also showed an ability to play well in the pass game. Now, the problem was that Harbaugh and Roman just don't care. They're like, J.K. Dobbins, 27 opportunities, no problem. They're going to kill this kid. Maybe it'll be some miracle and he'll survive. But given his history, for any running back, 27 opportunities is insane. But for someone with his history, I thought it was really insane. And then you also have Gus Edwards on IR. So I feel like Kamani Vidal is maybe more of a priority for me than I would consider some of these other guys if you want like a high or upside hit longer term. Daigle, what do you think about being more aggressive on Vidal here for anyone who has not been stashing him?
Sure. And the good news is when you say aggressive, I don't even think you need to bid much since Vidal doesn't have standalone value just yet. But to your point, the last 3 games, Dobbins has handled 86%, 74%, and 77% of the team's backfield touches. They are just giving it to him no matter what. So Vidal, yes, is pressing, but it's also what makes week 7 complicated on waiver wires because it's going to be a roster by roster basis. For instance, if you need that starter due to the couple of bye weeks, Cowboys and Bears, because your roster stacked with injuries, maybe instead you do want to go to like a Ray Davis, who I believe has more standalone value, whether Cook plays or not, after he showed last night that apparently without Cook, the Bills will just ride him entirely for 85% of the Buffalo's touches. Not only that, but I think Jeremy McNichols is also a very interesting one because not just RB1s. Let's not even see the starters against the Panthers. Go straight to the RB2s against the Panthers, including Tyler Algier going over for 100 yards and a touchdown this past week. Roshan Johnson got him for 25 yards and 2 touchdowns. Chase Brown, when he was playing behind Zach Moss, got them for 80 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Jamal Williams, even in week 1, 38 yards and a touchdown. So if Brian Robinson's out, I do think Jeremy McNichols is an RB3 this week that has more standalone value, at least for one game, than Vidal. But again, it just depends on your roster.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, I think on most of my teams, I'm like, man, even if I win this week, I want to have someone that can pop at the end of the year for me. And so like my priority would be Vidal, even on teams where like I need something because God, I want to try to win the championship, and I feel like Vidal is one that could pop later in the season. Of course, you need wins along the way, though.
Yeah, so. I'm about to say you have to get to the championship. If you're 1-5, you probably need the help right now instead.
Absolutely. All right. The two guys that I think are somewhat similar situations, Ray Davis and Sean Tucker. Now, Ray Davis, I think, has more standalone value. I think the big question on Ray Davis is when James Cook gets back, which it sounded like he was pretty close this week. When James Cook gets back, how much value does Ray Davis have? Similarly, when Rachaad White gets back, how much value does Sean Tucker have? I have way more faith, especially after the way that Ray Davis played last night, that Ray Davis will have standalone value than Sean Tucker. Daigle, what do you think about these guys?
I have little confidence in Sean Tucker, despite how great he looked. 47% of his touches, and he got 17. He handled the ball 17 times. 47% went for 10 plus yards. Just uber explosive. But it was also a Saints defense coming off of 70 plus snaps. They're going to now turn around in a short Thursday game with over 150 defensive snaps, which probably won't go well either against the Broncos rushing game. But for Tucker also, when Rachaad White comes back, the NFL doesn't work in a way that he's healthy scratched, right? He's not just getting 0 touches. We're now talking about, I think, best case scenario, a 3-headed timeshare, and then showing up to the Sunday morning start sit chat with you and Silva and making Silva go insane because you're asking, do I start this player on 8 touches in a 3-headed committee for the Bucs? And even if Rachaad White were to miss another game, I mean, just look at the box scores against the Ravens defense, who the Bucs play this week. Literally, even Jaden Daniels and Josh Allen, no one, all running backs included, have reached over 50 yards against this Baltimore front seven. So I think it's a pretty bleak outlook, honestly, despite a very good performance for Tucker.
Agreed. I don't really have much interest in Tucker, like this quote that it's going to be a 3-headed committee.
I mean,
that's
what do you
going
do with
viral. What'd you say?
I said, what do you do with that 3-headed committee? Like,
well,
great, okay.
I don't even think it's true. You know what I mean? Like, I think when
Yeah.
Rachaad White gets back, it's going to be mostly Rachaad White and Bucky again. Like maybe Sean Tucker sprinkles in a little bit, but yeah, I don't think that just because Todd Bowles said it on Monday after Sean Tucker crushed that it's definitely going to be true. The one that I think is more true is on Ray Davis. Played so well last night, and I think that he's going to get work. It's just hard with Josh Allen stealing so many rushing touchdowns. It's going to be hard for Ray Davis to find confident starting value when James Cook is healthy. But yeah, I still think Ray Davis should be owned. He was one of my favorite one injury away guys also.
I've compared that situation to what I think Tyrone Tracy and Devin Singletary will be, because a lot like David Montgomery, Devin Singletary wasn't playing bad. Like, he was doing the right things at the right time. They can't just take him off the field, regardless if we saw how explosive Tracy is. And I think that's what Davis may have made that Bills backfield too. And again, Davis profiled as amazing pass catcher, an 11% target share for 2.5 catches per game coming out of Kentucky. That's a role that we thought he may have been able to earn in the preseason anyhow over James Cook. It has not been like that. But the fact they can add another element to this offense it's still kind of figuring out their way, since Keon Coleman is failing right now, at least early in the season, to earn targets himself downfield. Davis, I do think, can be one of those, just another committee flex option.
Yeah, agreed. The other guys down here at the bottom, the one that stands out, of course, is Bub Means. On this short week, if you're desperate, they have no one. I mean, Olave and Shaheed look like they're going to miss. He's catching passes from Spencer Rattler, but Bub Means is at least in the mix. And then we're not sure on Neighbors. I think Neighbors is going to be back. He's going to freaking concerts and stuff like that. But even so, Darius Slayton's like a good NFL wide receiver. Probably want to have him on my team on a deep format. Any thoughts on these wide receivers at the bottom here?
Darius Slayton, 22 targets the past 2 games. Another great matchup against the Eagles defense. So if Neighbors is out, you already know just to run it back. And Bub Means is interesting. I don't think I would be high on him if it were not for Pat Surtain also suffering a concussion in the first snap, and then likely, like Olave, missing this game. But otherwise, it's a hell spot for the Saints. You're talking about a 5th-round rookie quarterback on his first short week, and with his 3rd-string center, it looks like, and backup right guard. So I'm very concerned just about the Saints offense as a whole. I'm hoping we get 8 targets from Bub Means again, because at least we know he led the team. He tied Alvin Kamara, I should say, with 8 targets apiece whenever Olave exited in the first quarter.
All right. Anything else you want to mention before we get to the questions from the people?
If you're desperate in tight end premium scoring, the options that stepped in for their injured starters, Will Dissly, Grant Calcaterra for Dallas Goedert, and Jatavian Sanders were all pretty much full-time players. Calcaterra ran just 3 fewer routes than the Eagles dropbacks. He was out there, spiked an explosive play as well. So just another deep option, since you pretty much lost Tyler Conklin, in my opinion, after that Devontae Adams trade.
Okay. Let's go to some questions here from the people. Somehow, miraculously, we got 2 questions from 2 separate people. I assume they're 2 separate people asking about Drake May versus Kyler Murray. I can't believe this. The first one from Sean says, is there a quarterback on waiver with more season-long upside than Kyler Murray? I guess people are out there dropping Kyler Murray. And then the second one from Tipper Matthew said, am I crazy to think Drake May has more upside than Kyler Murray rest of season? I didn't realize that the panic was so stark out there on Kyler Murray. I agree, he's been bad. He's had one good game as a thrower, I thought, and that came against the Rams, just absolutely atrocious defense. Kyler Murray has been pretty rough otherwise as a thrower. Now, I don't go around dropping guys who can run for 80 yards and a touchdown in a game. So I'm still in on Kyler, but yeah, what do you think about these Drake May versus Kyler Murray questions here, Daigle?
I would not get that desperate, even though maybe Drake May, again, against the Jaguars, who every quarterback they faced has been a top 12 option, including Deshaun Watson, who snuck in there as the QB 11. I mean, Drake May is in for a nuclear spot this week, but long-term, rest of season, you still want Kyler Murray for sure. And I know it's been hit or miss, but even just 2 weeks ago, we got a QB5 performance from him because he called a shot, had that long 50-yard run on the opening drive for a touchdown. So still in on Kyler Murray.
Yeah.
But I will say, if you're super flex leagues, like if they're shaking out where you have any combination of the last round guys or waiver wire pickups, Andy Dalton, Bo Nix, Sam Darnold, and Drake May, like those are all good. They are all great for super flex leagues right now.
Yeah. And by the way, like it sounds like maybe Daigle is a little bit higher on Drake May than me. I like Drake May a lot. I don't know that I would want to start even against the Jaguars. Like he still has the league's worst offensive line. His number one receiver is freaking 5'7", 180. You know, like I get it. If I was desperate, I'd be fine. But I'm not like, even against the Jaguars, I'm not even like excited to start Drake May. Maybe I'll change my mind, but
you're going to change your mind whenever you see he's the optimal cash game play on Friday.
Well, that's totally different. That's not season long, you know? I mean, that's salary-based stuff. Okay. Anyways, SanFran22 says, please rank your top 2 for a single game replacement pickup. A streamer at wide receiver, SanFran needs Juju, Ladd McConkey, Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, Xavier Legette. Interesting decisions here, Daigle. Go ahead.
I am going with the elite offenses or elite players. Ladd McConkey, not available in the majority of leagues, so we don't really get to talk about him much here. And also just a weird situation with the Chargers last week. Not only Jim Harbaugh leaving in the first quarter and then returned after heart palpitations, I believe, but it was Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnston, and Hayden Hurst, who all exited as well. We don't know their statuses just yet, but rest of season, I'm still taking McConkey, who should not be available. And then I picked the ceiling and elite offenses, and that's what the Packers is, and Christian Watson. So I will go Christian Watson.
Yeah. Single game, you'd say the same thing for this week only. He's asking for a single game replacement. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, both of them. Okay. Even though Legette and the Panthers in an amazing spot against the Commanders as well.
For sure. Iggy Madridito says, would you drop Rome Odunze for Pop Douglas? This makes me sick, Daigle, but I guess it's in the mix. What do you think about it, Rome or Pop?
It does make sense because now you have Cole Kmet playing so well that he's basically stealing the third wide receiver targets from Rome Odunze. Having said that, we're in a similar situation with Christian Watson, Dontavian Wicks rotating, where the moment someone, if anyone, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen gets hurt, Odunze's right in there, and then suddenly he's the cover image of waiver wire. So it just depends on your roster. I know we use that term a lot, but it's very true. If you need to start someone immediately, the Bears are clearly on bye, but also Douglas for the next couple of games is a better play outright than Odunze. So if you're losing, you don't have time to stash Odunze, then yes, go for Douglas. Otherwise, I can't get myself to drop Odunze. I couldn't even put him on the drop list for everyone.
Agreed. Greasy Samosa says, which running back to prioritize? Garendo, Davis, Taylor, or Vidal? I'm not sure which Taylor this is. Maybe Patrick Taylor he's talking about here, but yeah, this is going to be really team dependent, but yeah, my personal lean on this would probably be Davis, Vidal, Garendo, Taylor in that order, but it's going to depend on your team. Daigle, what do you think?
And it depends which week. Exclusive for this week, I go Garindo over all of them. But rest of season, I'm with you. If you want to stash, Vidal over Davis. If you need some immediate pop or points because you're desperate, Davis over Vidal. Patrick
Okay.
Taylor, I will say for the 49ers backfield, whenever Jordan Mason first left the game in the second quarter, Garindo out-touched him 10-6. Taylor was the pass-catching back. It's just that Garindo's so explosive that I think you can get by with 12 to 16 touches there.
The names Jib said, is Jaleel McLaughlin droppable? Feels like Aldrick Estime would get a shot ahead of him, and he's been so inefficient. Aldrick Estime did get back from an injury and played a few snaps in that game on Sunday. They're just not the same kind of player. I'm not sure that they're really competing for the same role, but I haven't really thought about that one too much. What do you think about it, Daigle, McLaughlin or Estime?
Given that it's a short week, if we're talking about exclusively for week 7, I don't know if that's too quick for Estime to turn around like even half of the team's carries, given that they limited him in his first game back from injured reserve. But since he's going to have 10 days rest beyond that, I do think it's a good time to at least pick up Estime. I believe he probably has more upside than Jaleel McLaughlin, but you are right. They're playing two different roles. And right now, Javonte Williams is not playing bad enough the last couple of weeks to really block anyone.
Yeah. There are some quotes out there from Sean Payton saying, like, he wants to see the young guys play. He was referring to their wide receivers, but, I would include Estime in that mix as well. He's one that they drafted. They probably want to see him,
What's really mucking it up is that I don't think people realize Bo Nix is averaging 6 rushing points per game. Like he's like the light Josh Allen and taking away carries from all of these guys. The entire point was to get them targets and at least some efficient carries, and Nix is sort of taking everything.
Yep. Heck LCG says, is Bucky Irving or Rachaad White droppable if you're rostering both? Sean Tucker has me worried. We covered this at the top. I'm really not as worried as maybe the rest of the field is on Sean Tucker. I would not be dropping Rachaad White or Bucky Irving pretty much under any circumstance. Daigle, any thoughts?
I think the most extreme drop I could get to in the drop list was Travis Etienne, especially in 10-team leagues. Trading him outright for Tank Bigsby, if that's even applicable, and also dealing with the week-to-week injury now and just getting outplayed by Bigsby every single game. But I could not get the Rachaad White because, again, I think White comes back and at the very least still has the pass-catching role to himself.
Yeah, this Travis Etienne situation is a real mess. We'll get to more on that with Silva. But yes, Daigle does have Travis Etienne on the drop list. I would not drop Travis Etienne in like a deeper league, but 10-team league, sure. If you want to drop Travis Etienne, you may have to. Smith TK93 says, will Kendre Miller ever be a viable running back? Seems like the Saints just hate him, man. I mean, they had him. He seemed like he was healthy, and they activated him. And then they were like, oh, but you're going to be a scratch. It's like they activated him just so they could tell him that he's a healthy scratch in this game. But I don't know. I know he's on your honorable mention here in deep leagues, Daigle. Any more thoughts on Kendre? I got a question from someone asked me, this guy I hadn't talked to in like 5 years, texted me, and he was like, hey, who do you think that I should have on my roster, Trey Benson or Kendre Miller? I said Trey Benson just because his team doesn't hate him, but, I didn't really have strong conviction about it. What do you think about Kendre Miller?
And when Trey Benson came off the bench this past week because James Conner was having his ankle taped up, he looked good too. But Kendre Miller, it's just the fact that Kamara has been on the injury report now a couple weeks in a row. It's like the J.K. Dobbins outlook where they're giving this aging back with not great injury history, just all the touches. So I still believe in Kendre Miller, but it is definitely closer to a 14-team league. I'm curious how they play it this week. Short turnaround. Again, the entire offense just missing. Like it seems like one where maybe they would want to test the waters with Kendre Miller a little more. So definitely, if you're just trying to stash, the waivers are thin. I'm more open to it, especially ahead of the Thursday night game.
Yeah, Kamara does seem super banged up, but he keeps playing through it, man. I mean,
playing good too.
Yeah, for sure. All right. That is going to do it for our week 7 look at waivers. For a more detailed look at the waiver wire, be sure you're reading Daigle's article. Be sure you're checking out One Season Away, and you can join Daigle in Discord to have your waiver wire questions answered. Daigle, what time is that again in Discord for waiver wire subscribers? I'm sorry, for DraftKit Pro subscribers?
Tuesday, 5 p.m. Eastern, And it's probably going to be a lot of roster by roster questions since that's what the waiver pickups are this week. So I will get to all of them specifically for your roster. And also, by the way, because I saw the name at first, and I know people are going to try to squeeze it in for Drake May or someone else, do not drop Dak Prescott. I know he's played awful the last 2 games. Please look at the schedule. Do not drop Dak Prescott over his bye.
Yep, agreed. Okay, that is going to do it for this look at the Week 7 waiver wire. Be sure you're following Daigle, not Jay Daigle, or is it not John Daigle? Not Jay Daigle.
Not Jay.
Not Jay Daigle. You can find me at Adam Levitan for Daigle. For producer Adam, for producer Ryan, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.